Good evening. Welcome to my channel. My name is David Okun, and thank you everybody who has been helping me, who has been supporting this channel. Thank you for subscribing to this channel. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for watching the videos, giving feedback, and engaging in the discussion in the this program. And we have been talking from the beginning of this program. We have been talking about the cost of living. I've been discussing different perspectives with regards to this topic. I'm now looking at the financial crisis of 2007 to 2008, which occurred globally, which started in America. In my conversation in this video and in this program, I've made it very clear that everything we do regarding the economy of the globe, every little thing is connected. It is interconnected in every way, in every country. So what happens in Britain, what happens in the Western world, what happens in the developed world, Middle East, what happens in Africa, everything happening in the globe is connected, and it is responsibility of the people of the world, rich or poor. I have said at the outset about the cost of living that it is related to income, it is related to wealth, it is related to wealth inequalities around the world. It is created by a system of the economy, a system of rule, a system of politics. It is created by the defaulted system of capitalism. Capitalism is the driver of the global economy, and capitalism helps us to create wealth. The problem with capitalism from the beginning has been when the system concentrates wealth in the hands of few, taking this wealth away from the many, where 90% or more of the population live in poverty. This is a deliberate policy, systemic, and that is why there is the cost of living crisis, which began within the global economic networking. There are different theories as to why the cost of living began. We began to look at the cost of living in terms of other factors, including the war in Ukraine. And now then, therefore, we have come to look so far and concluding that the primary cause of the cost of living is actually economic crisis and other crises within the economic and the social systems. And this is a characteristic underpinning the system of capitalism from when it started in history, how it operates today, and how it is actually moving into the future. And therefore, we have said elsewhere within this program that the fundamentals deciding whether or not there is the crisis of the cost of living, it has to do with whether or not the state intervenes. The state can intervene such as it does in Britain, where I live, such as it does across the globe. It intervenes via the instruments of the public sector and public policy and processes. The problem now arising when in the decades of economic dispensation and the political arguments, practices, and policies. We have seen in the decades where the public sector has diminished to the point where it is now closing down, and this is by design other than by accident. Whereas in the past there had been a view, political and economic view, from the state and proposing and also intervening in the economy to support the public sector within the capitalistic system. Governments doing this as they did are now changing to say there should be less government, meaning less public sector, and also therefore less funding for the public sector. This has led to the dwindling into the reduction of the public sector. Without the public sector, government cannot help to intervene to deal with crises, including the crisis of wars in Ukraine, the crisis of COVID-19, the crisis such as we are talking about now, the financial crisis that occurred between 2007 and 2008, beginning in the United States of America. The simple fact is that the purpose for me speaking about the cost of living over and over, because it's a serious crisis. It has been a serious crisis for a while, and it's going to go on. It's not going to stop. It's going to go on, and people are going to suffer even more. Therefore, it is necessary for us to understand the problem. Because if we understand a problem, then we can solve it. Especially in the face of the government, even government in Africa, refusing now to intervene in the economy, to support the public sector. Once that is happening, where the tilting of society has gone in favor of the businesses, big businesses, wealthy big businesses, and in the neglecting of the rest of the economy, such as the economy involving the 90% of the population. Once that is a state of affairs within society, we are left on our own. The government, with the best of intentions, cannot, in practical terms, help the people who need help. And the people who need help in modern economy are actually the majority, the 90%, the lower and the middle class. The people who do not need help are actually the upper classes, the wealthy, the multimillionaire and the multimillionaires. And that's why the multimillionaires and the multimillionaires do not suffer from the cost of living. I've been saying this statement because I want people who are actually affected and people who are not affected to understand the problem. There are people who are really very rich. There are multi-billion. The problem with these people is that they are poorly educated in terms of social relations. If you are rich, if you are a multimillionaire and you are a multi-billionaire, and my video I've already spoken about some of the wealthy people like Elon Musk, people like Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Arnold Bernard. These are extremely, they are worth in hundreds of billions of US dollars. And these are the ones who should now be working with the government to intervene to help people who are in crisis. In times of crisis as a cost of living. Unfortunately, they are so greedy and so backward in terms of culture that they, instead of actually helping, they put pressure on the government to give them more money. To the extent that every time there is a crisis, it is an harvest time. It's a time of harvest for the multimillionaires and multibillionaires. They get more money. During the financial crisis of 2007 and 2008, more wealthy people make more money even when people are losing money. The money is being lost from the majority poor during every crisis, including the cost of living crisis, COVID-19, Brexit, war in Ukraine. Every time there is a crisis within the capitalism, money and wealth is transferred from the poor to the rich. Don't ask me why, but that's the evidence. Recently in the UK government gave billions of pounds to energy companies. At the time when the energy company said they are making so much money that they don't even know what to use the money for, the UK government still gave free of charge, gave billions of pounds in tax policy to the energy company at a time when the people in Britain cannot afford gas, electricity, and food. They cannot access healthcare. They cannot access education, public transport, housing, and income. The pay for employment for those on low income, the minimum wage, is extremely low. And the minimum wage in the UK is £10, should be about £30 or more. This is from the top of my head. You don't even have to be an expert, because this is common sense. If you are culturally well educated, which I expect politicians to be well educated culturally, culture simply means you understand people and their problems. You are not ignorant. You don't need experts to tell you how much you should pay people who work for a living in a country like Britain, in a country like America, the West, or in Africa. Because the writing is on the wall. Everybody can see that people are actually living in poverty, and yet you have people who are educated in some of the best universities, the members of parliament, ministers, researchers, government advisors. These are the people with the best of information, with the best of access to accurate information, yet they fail. Now you will not know why they cannot really understand the problem citizens are going through. But this is the kind of information, this is the kind of discussion I would like to draw your attention to going along this discourse. People need to understand. People need to understand the problem precisely. There has to be develop an accuracy of understanding what the problem is. The problem is because the government is not intervening in the economy. Therefore, there is a crisis of living, and it is not going to stop unless the government stops and starts helping people. The government cannot help people without the public sector. The government now gives billions and trillions of pounds of public money within the UK, America, and the rest of the world. Giving this money to private companies who are actually, some of them are not very rich, but still, these are people who actually access public money. They are private companies accessing public money in the name of providing public service. Unfortunately, they don't provide public service with this money. They take money from the government and spend the money on infrastructure and capital. Capital and infrastructure mean wealth. So, in other words, the rich people who own private companies, big private corporations, get public money from the government to provide public service. But they invest this money in wealth, and this wealth is owned by them. That's how they make money. In other words, the government gives public money free of charge to people who are so rich that they should be the ones giving money to the people of the world who are very poor. And you cannot understand this logic except in the fact that the government is actually like a walking dead. Because the government which does not understand anything because of lack of cultural education. It's a disaster. And we have a disaster in our hands. Because if 90% or more of people, of the population of the world are facing extinction because of poverty, and the predicament is only beginning. It's not going to end because of the system which it's very complex. The economic system and the political system are really complex, including the legal system. The system and the instrument of state rule are extremely complex, and that's why I try my best to explain it over and over through this process because it is important to me. I believe it should be important to everyone because it's our life. If we don't understand it, we are going to die. And if we die as poor people, we are also going to die a second time as rich people. And my message to the rich and the poor of the world is that do not think if you sit there and do nothing, you're going to escape. The poor will die first because of negligence. Because the cost of living is the product of negligence, government negligence, and nothing else. It's not the war in Ukraine. The war in Ukraine is part of a normal process. People have been fighting from the beginning. It didn't start yesterday to fight. We have been at war all the time. All our in the decades we have been fighting. You cannot go in a country. We have war in Niger, in North Africa, Northwest Africa. At the moment, we have problems in Central Africa. We have corruption. We have all sorts of problems. But the function of the state is to intervene, to manage these problems. And when states begin to fail to intervene, poor people who are the majority, because we operate capitalism as a system. Capitalism and the market economic system concentrate wealth in the hands of the few, not the many. And this is not a game, because people are going to die. And if we, as humans, as cultural people, are so ignorant and so negligent that we allowed 90% of people to die, to go extinct, do not think if you are a millionaire, you're a multi-billionaire, do not think that the majority of the population dying is going to make you escape, because that is violence. It's human violence. It's human ignorance. People do not know how to live peacefully. It's violence. It's a type of war. And so when the poor dies first, the rich will also die. Humanity will go extinct, because when we finish with the poor people, killing them, we are going to turn around and kill each other. It's rich people. Rich people will not survive. They're going to kill each other because they have killed the poor. Because this is killing. You cannot prevent wealth and opportunities from helping people who need help. This is what is happening. This is the cost of living crisis. This is what is happening with the cost of living. This crisis creates the cost of living. Now we have the cost of living as a crisis. I've chosen to speak about it, but it is a sign. It is not the only problem, it's a sign. If you want to understand it, and put it in perspective that it is our human responsibility to run our lives. We are supposed to survive. If you are a victim of the cost of living, if you are not a victim of the cost of living because you are rich, you are multi-millionaire, you are multi-billionaire, take responsibility. If you are a government, because we believe human beings are the ones running the government. They are not animals. They are not aliens. If you are a human being running economy as a wealthy person, as a corporation, a big corporation, if you are a government, you have to pay attention, stop, and start changing your attitude and your mentality. Start helping people. Change the government, change the policy, intervene in the economy, invest more in the public sector. You cannot privatize the public sector. You cannot privatize the health system. You cannot privatize transport system. You cannot privatize housing. You cannot privatize schools for education. You cannot privatize employment as an objective. The government must actually establish and finance the public sector. So we need to turn back from privatizing the public sector, because the private sector is not designed to help people. The government and the public sector is designed to help people. If we accept the government to privatize the economy, if we accept the government to privatize the health service, education, transport, employment, if we leave this in the hands of private companies, then we, the people of Britain, the people of America, the people of Europe, the people of the world, we will be the ones to blame. We should tell the government to stop privatizing the public sector. In the sense that, to repeat the point I repeated before, that privatization, private companies are not there to help people. They are not even there to create jobs. In other words, private companies, especially big corporations, do not create jobs. The government is ignorant. Any government, including the British government, does not know what it's talking about, including America, including anywhere. If you go to anywhere in any country and somebody tells you the private sector creates jobs, tell them you are a liar, because either they are lying or they are stupid. Stupidity means they don't know what they're talking about. They're ignorant. They're poorly educated. They don't know anything. The private businesses, any private business, go and ask them. Go and ask big corporations if they're telling the truth. If they know what they're doing, they're going to tell you we didn't start our business to create jobs for anyone. And if you go to look for work and tell them I want a job because I am unemployed, they're not going to give you that work. Private companies want problem solvers. That's what they want. If you can solve their problem, they are going to hire you. Their aim is to make money. It's not to create jobs. So they cannot create jobs. Creating jobs is an incident of their operation. See, it's incidental. It is by almost accident that they create jobs for anyone. They don't. What they do, they make money. They are there to maximize profit. And that's what the only reason a private company is created is to maximize. Is of the primary objective, maximize profit, to make money, to create more wealth. And that's why when the government gives public money to them, their instinct is to pocket the money, to put the money in their pocket. They don't give it to anybody. If you are, for example, if you come to Britain where I live, government giving money to energy companies to give to people who are struggling, they don't give it. If you go to, say, British Gas or to any energy company which supply electricity and gas, the UK, go to their website now. When you watch this video, you go and see what's happening there, because you will not even find the information. You will look and look and look on their website, and they have hidden all their telephone numbers because they want to save money. If you go to more and more companies now, you can't phone them. If you phone them, you will be on the queue. You will be speaking to the machine. Nobody is there to answer the phone. Because everything is now online. You have to go online and the machine, the computer, will speak to you. If the computer is wrong, they will refuse to give you help. And normally in practice, they don't give any help at all. Come back to the hospital in the UK where I live, the dentistry. If you are actually, if you don't have money, you're not going to be treated in the hospital anymore. Because unless they can make money, they're not going to treat you. Because the government is not even funding them properly. The government only fund them whatever they are funded. Most of the money is given is actually to build infrastructure. These infrastructure are sold off, like big buildings, equipment, whatever. They are transferred to provide health care for the rich. So in the future, going forward now, because of government attitude, because of the destruction they are doing with the public sector, because of that is what's happening. Going forward now, public sectors in its entirety, within the health, economy, education, public transport, dentistry, and employment, all these are going to shut down because of cost cutting. Cost cutting allow private companies to make money, to make profit. They cut costs. And you, from the point of view of private company, you are a cost. That's why there is a long waiting list. There's a long waiting time in the hospital. Not for any reason, because they don't want to provide service. It's a way of avoiding providing service. There is no reason why a sick person should wait 12 months or even 2 years for an operation. The only reason why there is a long waiting time in the hospital, even if you phone them, sometimes you wait for 2 hours on the phone. You call your private a practitioner, a hospital, your doctor. You call your doctor in the UK, I think is the same across the globe, because they don't have money to help you. So they keep you waiting so that you are frustrated. And if you go through, they ask you a few questions. They don't even check you. They don't actually do anything. That is the experience. People are now surviving by chance. If you don't have money, you cannot access healthcare. You cannot access public transport. You cannot access food. You cannot access energy. And this is now what is happening. The world for the few and not for the many. So once the many are excluded, which means they are going to die because they don't have food, they don't have medicine, they don't have energy. So you are on your own. You have to really think, what are you going to do? You have to try and talk to your member of parliament if they can listen. I don't think they have the money to open their offices, because this is how bad things are. Infrastructurally, because your member of parliament is part of the public sector. The MP's office, the member of parliament's office, is not actually a private company. The private companies are not serving poor people. Private companies in the world, UK included, are serving millionaires and multi-billionaires. So, if you don't have money, you're excluded from everything, including food and energy. Private companies will be shutting down. If they don't make profit, they're not going to open their businesses. So somebody telling you, oh, the private company is going to create jobs for me. They're not. They're going to shut down because employment represents a cost. And with technology now, there are no jobs. Go to the supermarket in the UK. Where I live. I live in the UK. Go to the supermarket. Customers are cashiers because you have to go to computer, go to the bank. I do my banking on my mobile phone. I no longer go to the bank. I don't know. I can't remember the last time I went to the bank. I don't go there. That means people are employed in bank. People are employed in the supermarket. They are unemployed in buses. With artificial intelligence, buses and trains will be driving themselves. So drivers of buses, pilots of train drivers, drivers of ships, taxi drivers are going to lose their jobs because these vehicles will be driving themselves. The military are going to be closed down. The human aspect of the military system is going to end. The machine will run the military with robotics. If robots are created, you're going to have human robots. We're not having drones. Drone is a type of robot. It's now fighting with bombs and munitions, replacing human pilots. Tanks are going to be self-driverless. You see, security in the military, the police, the civil sector, they're all going to be robots. This is the future. And between now, people will be losing their jobs, being employed and excluded, because the private sector is not going to give them money for free. They're going to shut down the human element of the economy. So employment will stop. The cost of living may be a serious issue, and it is. But it's a sign of something more serious than that. That's why I'm talking about it. And that's why I'm inviting you to support me, to talk about it. Help me to grow the channel, watch it. I know you're busy. This is your life. The information I give is different from what you hear on the news. It's different from what you hear, what you learn from the expert. Because they either do not know what is going on, or they have vested interest. They're not telling the truth. I'm not saying they're not telling the truth. I'm not saying, well, what they're saying is not true. About their analysis is false, either because they're ignorant or they are lying. I don't know if they're lying. I don't know if they're ignorant, but whatever they are saying, if they tell you that the crisis is created because of the war, the finance, what do you call it? The crisis of the cost of living is created by the war in Ukraine. They are wrong. The war in Ukraine is a crisis which the government should deal with in terms of the cost of living. And that's why I'm talking about the financial crisis, to prove, at least support the discussion that what creates the cost of living is a crisis. Look at the war in Ukraine, look at COVID-19, I've looked at every factor. I've looked at capitalism. I look at globalization. I look at Brexit. I look at the European Union as well. These are actually incidences of change. And every time there's change, there's crisis. And it is the function, the purpose of the government to intervene, to help people who cannot help themselves. People who do not have access to wealth, who rely on the government to help them. And so I decided to look at the recession, the financial crisis of 2007 and of 2008. If you were there, then you can talk about it on this video. Tell me what you think happened then. What do you understand? What is your understanding of the crisis? So when we look at the history of the financial crisis, when it started in America, we look at the major aspects. We see certain things like subprime mortgage crisis. These are terminologies. What do you know about subprime mortgage crisis? These are function of financial instrumentation in the modern economy. You will look at how the crisis affected created energy crisis of 2000, or United States housing bubble of 2000s. The United States housing market policy and the approach to correct the problem. And we look at the crisis itself, the automotive industry crisis. We look at other decisions, things like Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act. These are laws to try and deal with the crisis, European debt crisis, because it affected Europe. The crisis across the globe, summit meetings, we're looking at that. We're going to look at that government response and policy proposal. That's what I was been talking about. I've been talking about every time there's a crisis, the government responses. But the government cannot respond effectively, even to try and deal with the crisis, the financial crisis, because the cost of living began before the financial crisis. There has been the cost of living since the financial crisis, visible for everyone to see. Now it got worse and then we call it a crisis. But there has always been a financial, the cost of living problem. There has always been financial problem. But when it becomes a crisis, then we know there is a problem. But that doesn't mean that there was no problem. There was always a problem to do with finance, to do with the cost of living. But now it's a crisis, then we begin to talk about it. But the building, beginning from the financial crash of 2007, 2008, these are foundational, in my opinion, foundational in creating what crisis we have now with the cost of living, including the financial crisis of 2008, including Brexit, and you name it. Brexit, COVID-19, and the war in Ukraine. After the war in Ukraine, we will be talking about other things like terrorism. And if you look at the financial crisis, it happened, it actually occurred at the backdrop of the terrorism attacks around the world, including attacks in America, in the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan. All these are crises, including the financial crisis, which was probably triggered by the war in terrorism. Terrorism, war, and crisis in America, in Afghanistan, and in Iraq, and all the other conglomeration of crises, including environmental crisis. And the argument in this conversation is that every time there's a crisis, the government should intervene, but the government cannot intervene if it has shut down the public sector. The public sector should be reinstated. If the Labour Party in the UK wins the next election, if you vote, the people of Britain vote the Labour Party, talk to them, talk to your MP if you can, for them to restore the public sector. Because it is the public sector which can provide private services, public services. The private sector should continue to provide money, goods and services for the rich. That's what's now happening. What's not happening, the economy is providing services for the super rich only. You know, private property, private jets, private trucks and buses. And the poor are getting nothing, because the poor get nothing because the economy for the poor is shut down. It has to be reopened so that poor people, who are the majority, 90%, can gain access to livelihood. By shutting down the public sector for employment, for other form of government support like the welfare system. The welfare system is available in the and it should be available in the developing country as well. Because without that, with capitalism as an economic system, poor people cannot survive. So the welfare system should include employment policy, healthcare policy, educational policy, benefit, which is money given to people who cannot work, who are sick, who are elderly, who are disabled. And these are shutting down, literally, because the private sector is also shutting down anyway. The small and medium businesses are shutting down. Crises are shutting down small and medium businesses. And this is happening, and we need to understand what is happening. Because small and medium businesses, when it shuts down, at least within the private sector, they can provide food and energy or employment, but they're shutting down. We are being left with big corporations. Big corporations are going to shut down as well, because technology is going to shut it down, which means the government itself is going to shut down, because it will have no purpose. If the government shut down as a public body, the rich, the super rich will own the world. The Elon Musk of their age, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates. Which is going to be good for them. Where are we going to go? Unless they decide to give us some livelihood, they don't give it. They're not giving it now. The government is still there, but it's shutting down now. The public sector, part of it is still left, but it's shutting down. And right now, the rich people, super rich, should now be helping the poor. Who are actually 90% of the population of the world. It's not just in one country, but globally. If they're not helping now, what makes you think they're going to help? They're not going to help you. Some of them may not even be humans. Because, with technology, people are interfering with human life. These rich people some of them are actually psychopaths. They are insane. They're going to create creatures who are not even humans. We don't know if some people look like humans. They may be robots or aliens. How are we supposed to know? So we have argued here that government should respond. We have also pointed out, even if the government wants to respond like it happened with COVID-19, like it's happening now, the government needs the public sector to do that. Private sector cannot deliver public services because they take the money and invest it in capital, in infrastructure, which is wealth for them, and they, the government not giving them enough money to provide healthcare, to provide energy. Energy should be in the hands of the government. There is no reason why energy and food should be privatized, because these are actually necessities. Hospitals should not be privatized. The UK government have been telling the British people they are not going to privatize the healthcare, but the healthcare is now privatized. That's why there are long waiting time. In the housing, people can wait for 20 years in temporary accommodation within the local authorities, living in private housing which are being leased by local authorities. Local authorities are not building public housing, and that's why people wait for so long. And the British people should use their brains. They are very clever. Almost any British national is cleverer than me. They should know why they are suffering. They cannot access healthcare. They are depressed. They are suicidal. Their children are depressed. How can children be depressed wanting to commit suicide? Because they cannot go to school. They cannot access healthy food. They see how their parents are suffering in a country like Britain, the 6th richest country in the world, America, Europe, even Asia. Nobody in the world should lack anything because of human wrong. Therefore, we face troubles. Businesses are failing within countries, regions, and these are different factors. Looking at the financial crisis of 2007, from 2007 and 2008, we look at this global financial crisis and we see the dynamics of society. We look at the severity, the world economic crisis being impacted by this same crisis. A problem starts within the financial instrumentations, within the economy of America, and there's a problem with the global economy. You see, so we see and we also know that this financial crisis was very serious. You see, it was the most serious financial crisis since the Great Depression of 1929. In 1929, there was a Great Depression. Remember, in 1924, there was the World War. And every time there's a crisis, every time countries are at war, it affects the global economy. And so we had the financial crisis in 1929. the economic turmoil which happened in 1929 called the Great Depression. Leave a comment below if you know anything about the Great Depression, because these are evidence that every time there's a crisis in the economy, the government needs to intervene. And every crisis, one crisis, especially economic crisis such as occurred in 1929, affect the people who are on low income. So in the credit crunch, when I talk about the credit crunch, I'm referring to the financial crisis of 2008 and 2007 and 2008. So there was something called predatory lending. When you talk of predation, you talk about is a word of, it is the word of hunting. If you are hunting an animal, you're a predator. If a lion is hunting you, then you are a prey. The lion which is hunting you in the wilderness, in the jungle, is called a predator. So this material is describing lenders, people who lend money, people who are lending money to people who are poor. This material is describing them as predators. They are behaving like wild animals. These wild animals are hunting you down to eat you for dinner. So every time a lender becomes predatory and targeting the poor is their victim. The poor are their victim. People, being targeted, people on low income. The people who sometimes want to buy homes. See, we experience an economy practicing excess, taking risks with our lives, taking risks with our economy, taking risks with our finances, with our impacting on our financial institution globally. And this is what happened. And this started in the USA, United States of USA. And there is something called a busting of the United States housing bubble, culminating in a perfect storm. This is some of the languages used on this material. So when something bubbles, it bursts, and it creates a storm, described here as a perfect storm, a storm which is actually calamitous. It creates problems. It destroys. So we are the problem, institutional problem, the financial, globally, the impacting of the financial institution globally. With the housing sector in America bubbling into a burst. If something bubbles, it bursts. It is destroyed. It's actually in language describing this destruction which happened within the housing sector in the United States of America. There was a policy on housing where the government of America, of the United States, failed to provide housing for the American poor. It resorted to the private sector to try and create a housing policy which does not work within the private sectoral system. And the institution of finance, like I said in the opening, is not really designed to deal with public issue. Housing is a public issue. It is not a public issue if you are a multimillionaire and if you are a multimillionaire. If you are a conservative government in America, such as the government of George W. Bush Jr., the son of the former president of America, who was president within the conservative economy during this period of the financial crisis, the conservative government in America created this problem for the American people by creating a policy which they didn't think about. They were behaving as people who didn't go to school. And these were politicians, these were political leaders. And America is a world leader. America is the most powerful country in the world. And if its leaders do not know what they're doing with the economy, then the world is in a serious problem. Because that is what they did. They created an economic policy. They plucked an idea out of the blue. It's a form of insanity. It's a form of actually lunacy. Conservative government in America. See, conservatism is actually composed of mostly wealthy people who go to the best schools in the US and around the world. They are the elites of the globe. They are supposed to be the brightest the world has ever produced. They should be the source of pride for the American people and for the world. And yet, they became the shame of the world. They produced an economic policy of racketeering, of savagery, of exploitation, targeting people on low income in America. People who want housing, who want to buy, but they cannot. And there's a credit system created to persecute these people who are on low income, who wants a house to live in. And the government actually bully them using private empires of the economic instrumentation, the financial imperialism happening in America, impacting on the poor people who are the majority who wants housing. Housing in America should be provided by American government using the public sector, not the private sector. The financial institution, which is actually the habitat of the private sector, has no business in America, in the West or elsewhere to provide public housing, which is actually what people need as of necessity. In America, in Britain, and across the globe, these people are not dealers in property. They want these houses to live in. It's a necessity which should be provided directly by direct policy functionalities to provide public housing for the American people. The Conservative Party is obsessed with the idea of privatization, of marketization, including marketizing things which are not in its own nature marketizable, like public service. Housing is part of it, and when they try to use private system, and worse still, borrowing, allowing people who have no money to borrow money, they induce poor people to borrow money in America to buy houses. They induce these people, they lie to them, they mislead them into buying houses with money they don't have, having to borrow money from financial system, and they lend so much money, and this lending and borrowing system failed. That's how the financial crisis was created. It is actually reminiscent, it's actually typical of what embodies any cost of living crisis. So, in other words, the 2007 and 2008 was a type of the cost of living crisis within the housing sector. Comparatively, the cost of living crisis that we see it now has been created by energy crisis and food, the cost of food. But also we still have problems within the housing sector. So it's a conglomeration of problems associated with public sectorial failure at policy, at principle, and at practices, as we have seen, as we continue to see. And this is by far the purpose of this program, this YouTubing, trying to explain so that people begin to understand the genesis of the problem featuring now in the cost of living crisis. And going forward, we need to really take these things seriously, understanding to seeing to understand why there are failures within the public sector, why there are failures within the social economic system, why we as a community has resorted to a mode of conduct which is violent, which is counterproductive, which is destructive, which is unpermissible. This cannot be allowed to happen. And my dispensation within this programming is to give a voice to the British people, to the people of America, to the people of Europe, and across the globe, to speak for yourself. And before speaking, it is actually necessary to understand the genesis of every problem and the nature of the problem. Every problem is, of course, within the economic infrastructure, nationally, regionally, and globally. And therefore, it is my invitation to take this material seriously. And it's also my invitation, if you have been watching up to this time, to subscribe to this channel if you want more of this video. But more importantly, to my mind, it is for you now to engage with this material or engage in wherever you want to engage in discussing this, because if there is a problem, we need to solve it. And this problem is global, big, and I see it as an opportunity. I see it as an opportunity for even children now begin talking about it. Talk about the environment. Talk about the environment crisis. Talk about what you want to talk about. Talk about the cost of living as a crisis, because all these things are connected. In so kickstarting the process of discussion and conversation, we begin a process of healing, the process of solving what is actually a cataclysmic situation. It's a very big problem. And we have seen the behavior of the marketeers, the behavior of the market economic system, which operate outside the law, outside morality, outside any sense of value-orientated livelihood. These people behaving like wild animals, uncouth and cultural, in need of reform, as people, in need of cultural reformation, in this need we to look forward to in the rebuilding of our broken cultural economy. We have done well in the developmental economy. We have created wealth. We have produced our technologies. We have done so many great things. But we, as a people, have failed culturally. We disrespect ourselves. And we disrespect other people. So we abuse one another, rich or poor. And therefore, I say we are all in this together. We cannot do wrong things and expect good results. This is false. It's false economy. It's failed cultural economy. The change must occur. Beginning now. You're watching this program, take this situation involving the cost of living crisis as an opportunity. Opportunity to take your life responsibly. Your opportunity to learn about the problem. Your opportunity to take this chance to solve your own problem. To succeed as a person. To use your creative powers. Your knowledge, your learning. Your family, your community. Use every resources you have. And this is the appeal. You, the people of Britain, the people of the world, look after yourself. Live with one another. Stop calling one another strangers. They are not strangers. They're your friends. They are your allies. Especially when we live in a world where the state is failing to run the countries of the world. We saw with the financial crisis in America, the risk, the excessive risk taken by people who entrusted our economies to run, the private marketeers of the world. People who act totally irresponsibly as long as they make money. No sense of value. No sense of care. They live like common thieves, savages who are entirely uneducated, and so they are uneducated culturally. And they created what now was referred to as perfect storm in an economic environment. And this created a danger which now still we are actually dealing with today, which now features as the cost of living crisis. Next time we meet, we're going to continue talking about the economic crisis of 2007 and 2008 to illustrate not only the problem of the current cost of living, but also to look at the general problem of humanity, including the environment, including the economic development, including welfare, including social injustice, as we see being faced by the majority of the world population. This is global. And it is our responsibility as the human species. We can no longer afford to wait for the government to solve our problem. The world has changed. The world has shifted to individuals. And to survive, we need to adapt, to understand how the modern system works, such that we now take over the responsibility of providing for ourselves, for our families, for our friends. We take up responsibility to learn. We take up responsibility to socialize, because we need one another. You cannot, human beings are born to live in a society. We are our brothers and our sisters keepers. We gain knowledge for that purpose. We study, we go to school. But as we try to go to school today, we see a failure of the public sector, failing our educational system. Our children cannot feed in schools because of the failure of the public sector, failing to provide public service. So our children are going without food in a rich country like Britain, America, in Europe, in Asia, and in Africa, including the Middle East. There is a failure, systemic failure of the economic system, where we struggle now to even enjoy our lives. We need to take time to meet one another, to think of something good, play some music, dance. That's why we are depressed. That's why we are on medication, because we don't meet our families. We don't meet our friends. So we are sick physically, mentally, emotionally. That human contact is failing because all we think about is money and problems. Because we thought the government was there for us. When David Cameron of the Conservative Party in the UK said, "We are giving back your country," we should have listened to him. We, the British people, voted for the Conservative Party. And they came into power in a coalition with the Liberal Democrats within the British political scene, political landscape. And so they ruled And ever since the Conservative Party has been in power, we, the British people, have been electing the Conservative Party into power. And they have been telling us that they want smaller governments. That's what they say. And it is for us to listen, to understand what they are talking about. They are wanting a small and efficient government. These are commercial languages. Efficiency means cost cutting. The costs are actually the cost of human welfare. Funding for public sector. And when they talk about costs, they don't want to help. They're not going to give you money. They're not going to support employment. They're not going to support healthcare. They're not going to support public transport, housing, employment, welfare benefits. Shutting down. That is when they say they don't want to use taxpayers' money. They want to save public money. It is not true. And it is wrong. The government is wrong. They don't know anything. And it is you, the British people, to take an opportunity. The American people, the Europeans, they are doing the same thing. The decline of the public sector and the destruction of public service. That's why there is poverty. And this is the beginning. Other factors will exacerbate it, or even maybe part of the failure of the public sector. The public sector is there to intervene in a crisis. Like I said before, we need focus. We need to focus. Yes, we should have fun. We should go to parties. We have the drink. We have dinners. Go on holiday. But you need money. If you don't have money, if the government is not supporting the economy, you cannot have jobs. So you're going to be penniless. You're jobless and penniless. If you're not careful, you're going to be lifeless, dead. And so you have to really think. You have to really take responsibility for your life. At the same time, talk to the government. You don't just sit there and do nothing. Talk to the government. Talk to your MP. Tell them the problem. You are the expert on poverty because you are poor. If you work for a living, you are poor, even if you are middle class. If you cannot buy your house outright, cash, you may be a middle class, maybe you are getting 100,000 pounds per annum, but you can't use that money to buy a house. You still have to borrow. It's a necessity. You're a poor person. Don't be deluded. There is no division between the middle and the lower class. They are the same. They are workers. They work for a living. If you work for a living, that's the definition of poverty. If you know your status, you will deal with your life in a different way. There are people who are not rich, who are trying now to behave like rich people. They buy expensive cars, expensive houses on credit. They are convinced they are actually rich. They think they are right. If you are a multimillionaire, you can buy a house cash. You can buy a car without borrowing. You can buy whatever you like. You can go on holiday. Then you are rich. Otherwise, stop and come back together as a society. The working class, come together, talk to one another, think how you're going to solve your problem, because it is your livelihood. It's a matter of life and death. We fail to do anything at all. We continue like blind people. You see, poverty is not a ticket to ignorance. You are a student of life. You have to learn. You have to learn. You have to really read books, listen to videos, and think. Use your brain. Your brain is not for decoration, it's for thinking, even if you are a child. Children get child benefit. It's too low. It's not enough. Child benefit is too low. Children live in poverty in the UK because of the size, the level of child benefit. Child benefit, one child gets £21 per week. That is not enough. The second child gets about £14 a week. That is insane. I mean, who ever said that the second child needs less money? That is stupid. The government is insane. The government, especially here, I'm talking about the UK now, but it's the same across the globe. Take the example of the UK, the child benefit, the child gets money, help from the government, because children don't work. So the government should help them. Their parents are poor. By default, there's a policy of child benefiting. Money given to children in the UK to help children. £21 not enough. We want at least £50 per month, per week for children, one child. If you have 4 or 5 children, you should multiply 5 by 5. That is £250 per week. And I think, if I'm correct now in the UK, if you have 3, I think 2 children, maybe 3, you still get paid. But if you have more than that, you're not going to get child benefit anymore. That is wrong. Not in a rich country like Britain, not in a rich country like America. The government should start looking after children or poor people. And this is what the cost of living is about. It's an opportunity for us to come together and kickstart a conversation. We cannot just go quietly. We have to have a view on how our life operates and how the matter is going to end. We have to have a say. The last say is our life. This is our country. That is your country. This is our world. We have a place. We are supposed to have a voice. And this is what I have been advocating long time. You watch this video, take your time, visit a friend, have coffee, play some music, take a gift, talk, chat, laugh, because that is a medicine. Now people are thinking about problem, the cost of living, and we are getting sick, mental illness, you're taking drugs, killing you. Stop calling your friends strangers. People, we are not strangers. We are not supposed to be a danger as humans to other humans. We need a society. We need a community. We need families. Visit your friend. Phone your people. Phone your friend. Talk on the phone. Laugh. It doesn't matter how poor you are. Because your health is the #1 priority. Your health and your welfare. Even if you have nothing in your hand, even if you are sleeping rough on the street, your health, mental health, protect. A lot of people are actually dying of mental illness, stress. They are getting strokes. Children are getting stroke. How comes? I mean, where in the world have we even seen children getting stroke? What are they? Why are they worried? Why are children so stressed? Because of the system, because of our society, broken society. We have neglected the family. We have neglected the community. We behave like wild animals. When are we going to change and become human again? Stop being thieves. Stop being violent. Stop being criminals. Stop fighting. Stop attacking children. Stop attacking women. Women, stop attacking men. Whether you are rich or poor, same. Why are we fighting? Killing us. We are killing ourselves. We are actually committing suicide by being bad people. And that's why we are rewarded with calamities. It features as the cost of living. And I say the cost of living or any other crisis is an opportunity for us to take time, to take a step back and look at our lives. Self-examine yourself. Look at your life. What are you doing? Are you playing your part? Even talking peacefully to your children, talking peacefully to your wife, to your husband, to your partner, to even to strangers on the street. When was the last time you met a stranger and say hi with a smile on your face? We are the factors of peace. And so if we begin to cultivate peace by our behavior, by our attitude, by our mindsets, by the way we act, we begin to cultivate peace. We begin to be messengers of change for the better, healing our broken societies, our broken systems. Even our conversation with the state, with the government changes. The state will begin to listen to us as people, as the people of a country, as citizens. We change, we take responsibility, we learn, we master a craft such as the cost of living crisis. We are supposed to be experts on the cost of living. Even if you didn't go to school, it doesn't matter how old or how young you are to take responsibility for your life and speak to the government who we have entrusted to run the country on our behalf across the globe. It's called democracy. In case you are wondering, we don't elect our government in vain. We instruct them to work for us. We don't work for the government. The government is our servant. That's why we elect them. And when we say to them, we need this, we need you to increase our minimum wage, there is no point for the government to talk to advisors. We, the people, are the government advisors. We tell our MPs how much money we want the government to pay in minimum wage. We tell the government how we want the government to create employment by intervening in the economy using the public sectoral instruments. Now, if the government keeps closing down the public sector, we are not going to have employment because the private sector does not create jobs. They only create jobs if they need employees to create wealth for themselves. The moment they don't need employees, they don't create jobs at all. And it's not rocket science. With technology now, employment is going to disappear anyway. So what is the government's plan for income? Because employment is the primary income for any economy. If we don't work because the machine has taken over work and the government has shut down the economy, the public sector, where are we going to get money? Private businesses, multimillionaires and multi-billionaires are not helping us now. What makes us think multimillionaires and multi-billionaires are going to help us in the future? They won't. So, beginning now, we need to start working, take our lives into our own hands, take responsibility and look after our lives. And this has to happen for us because it's it's a matter of life and death. We fail to change, we fail to take responsibility, to look after our jobs, to create jobs even as small and medium businesses. And if you live in Africa, this is what you should do. Because small and medium businesses is the way to go in Africa. Government in Africa are not helping anyone. Because the Europeans promoting capitalism are the ones financing African governments. And they're telling African government to invest in capital, in infrastructure. They are specifically instructed not to invest in welfare. So if you see experts, NGOs going from here, or even private companies going to Africa to invest, they're going to invest, even if in the hospital, they are going to invest in capital, in infrastructure. They are not going to invest in frontline services, which is what we need. Infrastructure and capital, even if it is in the hospital, is actually wealth. It's promoting capitalism. These wealth are actually commercialized and it is given to the super rich. People who work for a living, the poor people don't get it. Poor people only access the benefit of development through frontline service, which is provided by the public sector, which is not allowed now in Africa. Public sector is not allowed in Africa, which means Africans are cut off welfare system. The family and communities in Africa are now have to create a parallel economy, social welfare based on community Nothing to do with the government. If the government helps, the government only gives them permission to use their lands, to use whatever resources, to grow their own food, build their own storages in Africa, cold storage, fridge, refrigerator, and start storing food. Start using your land and keeping animals, poultry, growing your own food, cultivating wheat, rice, cassava, bananas, and fruits. Grow your own food. You have land in Africa. Start using your land now, and stop. The government will still tax you, but the tax money goes into the pocket of government officials. That's why there is a lot of corruption in Africa, because of capitalism, which actually chooses not to regulate the economy, to control the behavior of people in power. The reason the government doesn't want to regulate the economy so that they allow rich people in Africa who are in power, to do as they please. They have absolute powers even in the West. People like Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, Putin in Russia. Some people say Putin is the richest. Yoweri Museveni in Uganda, some people say is worth $13 billion. Leave a comment below if you think Museveni of Uganda is rich. So you have to look after yourself. You have to take it, otherwise you're going to die. This is a call for survival. Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe, share with your family, and leave a comment below. See you in the next one. Thank you. Bye-bye.